classics into schools, and I think there's a real renewed interest from schools to want to learn Latin and classics. But on the other hand, there is this issue of lots of teachers retiring and how do we replace them, and having proper systems in place to keep classics going beyond the sort of offerings that charities like the Iris can provide. So yeah, there is this kind of dichotomy, and I think that there are lots of people that are concerned about it, and lots of people that are negotiating and talking with various people in government and elsewhere to try and get these structures in place.
Feedback from the children and the parents to you directly, what kind of things do they say?
We collect feedback every year from the staff in the schools and the pupils as well, and we meet with the parents and discuss them at parents' meetings, and always overwhelmingly positive, because the children never have any preconceptions about learning Latin. They just think they're learning something new and fun, and they can see how it's really relevant and interesting. Sometimes parents and teachers can have preconceptions. Maybe they had a bad experience of it, or maybe they do associate it with sort of a certain type of person. But usually when they do, once they see how much their child is enjoying it, or their class is enjoying it, they're converting pretty quickly to seeing this is a really great subject to learn.
We saw a child in one of the schools in Fife who said his parents were really proud that he was doing it because they never studied it. So you find that's a common response?
Yeah, definitely. We found that quite a lot, and we found children feeling proud that they're studying it because they may have been told, oh, Latin's something that's quite special to learn as well. So we quite often get reports of sort of increased sense of self-confidence from having learned Latin, which is great to be able to sort of pass on to the children. And I think they take that with them through their whole lives, which is really enriching.
And do you have an ambition to roll out Iris across the whole country? It feels like you're in Swansea, you're in St Andrews, you're in London, Oxford. So there's a hinterland in the middle that you missed out, including my home city of Birmingham, perhaps. Or are you there already?
We're not there already. No, it would be great to roll it out to as many cities as possible. It's always a contingent on having someone within, say, the university department that's really keen to push it forward and be the coordinator in the spot. And obviously things like funding as well. So that's the main problems that will get in the way of it spreading. But we're in talks with various other places, and we do hope to spread it to other cities. So yeah, I guess wait and see on that one.
I'll probably forget all this tomorrow.
You think you will, but you've written it down, so you've got time to go over it again. So do you wish you had more Latin lessons more frequently so you could catch up?
Effect 11, Latin says French. That would be better.
Would you like to carry on learning Latin when you go to high school?
Yeah.
There's one no, one yes. 2 yeses, 3 yeses, 4 yeses, 2 no's, 4 yeses. So 2/3 majority.
Why do you not? I don't like anything.
Oh dear. If any of the children taking part in the Iris project in Scotland forms a passion for learning more Latin, they may have trouble taking their enthusiasm on into secondary school. We spoke to Charles Dudgeon en route from his role as classics teacher at East Bank Comprehensive in Glasgow to a new job as the head of classics at the independent Wellington School in Ayr. He says that Scotland's state secondary system is now in a pretty desperate way when it comes to the teaching of Latin.
When I first entered teaching in 1990, one of the things which was always said was when it came to Latin we were in a much better situation than we were in England. And now I think it's the reversal in England, whereas about 20 years ago it seemed to be dead in the water. It's made a revival. Up here it is now either confined to the independent sector or it survives in little twinkling lights in the state sector in the most unlikely of places. If you were to ask people, where do you think it still survives in the state sector? They'll often mention places like Bearsden or Edinburgh or East Renfrewshire, and actually there's no classics teaching in any of the areas. If I were to quote some of the places where it's left, it's places like Kilbirnie, which is a small town in Ayrshire, it's Lanark. There is a good classics department in Kirkcaldy, which is Gordon Brown's old school. These are the places where it survives, and it survives there through a combination of very enthusiastic teachers and head teachers who are prepared to support the subject. I will be leaving my school, which is in the East End of Glasgow, in the summer, and that's the last light twinkling out in Glasgow. And that's a serious problem, and it's compounded by the fact that there's no opportunity to train as a physics teacher anymore in Scotland. As teachers retire, increasingly they're not replaced. If they were ambitious and wanted to head up a department, perhaps with more than one or two people, and then go on into middle management and senior management, it would be difficult to see how you could do that in the state sector. If, for example, which obviously isn't going to happen, Mr. Russell or Mr. Salmon were to decree that there was to be Latin in every school in Scotland, there simply wouldn't be the teachers to fulfil that, and we know that.
Did you say about studying Latin? Say yes. Brilliant. And do you like studying Latin?
Yeah.
How long have you been doing it?
2 sessions.
And you knew the answers to loads of questions, so you obviously are good at it, I think.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Well, I like the words and they sound weird.
And the grammar, I mean, I think lots of people would think it was boring learning about nouns and verbs and adjectives, but it sort of gives you the building blocks of English. Do you think that helps you with your English? Your writing?
Yeah.
And what's your favourite bit so far?
Drawing the pictures.
Yeah? What have you drawn? Can you show me? Aha, so you've drawn somebody being speedy for Keller, and then somebody being tall and somebody being small. For which words?
They're small.
Yeah.
They're tiny.
And what's the Latin?
Corvus and Magnus.
In Thornton and Colton of Balgony, the primary school pupils of Fife were still getting their heads around the difference between feminine and masculine nouns. But 400 years ago, it was a hotbed of Latin, the home and headquarters to Scottish Latinist poets who described the townscapes and coastlines of Fife in a language that Julius Caesar would have been able to read.
Urbes fifae literalis, oppida sic toto sunt sparsa in littore et urbe, dixeris, inque uno plurima iucta littore Fife, coast towns. Thick on the shore, so many towns you find, you think them one, or all in one combined. Here numerous all the waves of ocean's plain, or on Forth's bending shore, the sandy grain. The sea is seen with vessels overspread, while towns of men, as numerous, crowd the coast. None idle here, all hands to labour pledged. Home, abroad, is diligence the first.
Dr. Stephen Reid of the University of Glasgow studies Scotland's Latin culture.
Latin was Scotland's third language in the early modern period, alongside Scots and Gaelic. Children at grammar school are expected to speak predominantly in Latin or French, and we can see this in the statutes of Aberdeen Grammar School, which survived from the early 16th century. They were also subject to an intense classical education from an early age, and they had liberal exposure to Cicero, to Virgil, and to the other great authors of the Roman Golden and Silver Ages. Students went to university at a much earlier age than we do today, sometimes as young as 11. We've seen one student go to university at the ripe old age of 10, and their classical education continued at university with intense practice in debating and deliberations for Latin, and in detailed study of Aristotle's works in a Latin translation.
And tell us more about how Latin culture thrived in Fife.
Fife was a major centre for Latin culture, particularly after the Protestant Reformation of 1516. That's in part because it's connected to Sir John Scott's Tarvet. Scott's Tarvet was a cultural Maecenas in the 17th century, and he founded a chair of humanity at St Andrews. He bought a lot of books for the library. He also published Scotland's first printed atlas in 1654. But it was he, along with a number of poets, who edited and created this Delitiae Poetarum Scotorum, a 2-volume, 1,300-page collection of poems of 37 of the best Scottish Latin poets, which was designed to showcase Scotland's international Latinate skills, if you like. So he had a very close connection with St Andrews University, and St Andrews University was bigger than all the other universities in Scotland combined in the 16th century.